So a lot of people are still arguing about fascism versus communism without actually understanding either, which the people who don't understand either are calling people fascist, but it's okay. But I also noticed another interesting take today that I thought was very worth talking about. Someone said, maybe we need to remake the Republican Party. And I was like, maybe we need to bring back the Whigs. Maybe we need to bring back some other party that existed before the two factions that now control everything. Maybe we need to make it illegal for these two factions that have no constitutional authority to do what they do with the voting system. Maybe we just get rid of them entirely. Maybe. If you're attempting to remake the Republican Party, stop. The Republican Party is dead. It is not the Republican Party. Because if you look at what their founding documents say, the modern people sure don't live up to that now, do they? But, let's talk about this. Nowhere in our government's founding documents, nowhere in our Constitution, even after 234 years, 234 years of the Constitution, has there been an amendment that makes it that this is a two-party government. There are laws that make it so that other parties can't get their foot in the door. Those laws were passed by Republicans and Democrats to make sure no one else could get their foot in the door. But let's remake the Republican Party. Abandon it. Abandon it. Because it is functionally the moderate side to the Democrats. Republicans are no longer right of center. They are actually at the top of the broken circle. They oppose authoritarianism. And yet they're called the authoritarians. It is mind-numbing how uneducated the people who talk about things in the United States are. Mind-numbing. You people are racist. I don't know. You've got a Democrat listing on your name. You want to talk about racism? Let's talk about racism. Let's talk about that faction you're a part of. Let's do that. Let's go through primary source historical documents. Fuck your revisionist history, because revisionist history isn't history. It's historic fiction. The party shift that happened apparently in the 50s and 60s, that's fiction. It never happened. You find a fucking source, I will sit there and go through it with you and say, okay, where'd you get this source? Is it a legitimate source? Or is it a website that has these weird squiggles in the fucking HTML? Probably a website that has weird squiggles in the HTML or some other symbol in the HTML that actually disqualifies it as a legitimate source. Holy shit! You dumb fucks all learn MLA, right? When you have to write papers, you all learn MLA format, if you've ever had to write papers in this century. Historians don't. See, there are other styles of citation. There's a style called Chicago. There is a subsection in the Chicago style called Turabian. Turabian is a pain in the ass style where you sit there and go, oh, I've got all these great sources, and you bring them in, and then you find out, no, you don't. Far be it from me to tell you that you're an idiot. Don't listen to that. Don't pay attention to that. I got my info from Wikipedia. It's an open source site. Anyone can change the fucking information on Wikipedia. Problem is the people who control who gets to final say in that. And those people also don't know anything. But what do I fucking know? The amount of people screaming about this, that, or the other thing. I mean, oh my god, we can't default. Yes, we can and we should. Our money is already worthless. We need to default. We cannot, again, raise the debt ceiling. And why are we raising the debt ceiling? Oh, because we are funding another nation. American taxpayer dollars meant to take care of our nation, our infrastructure, our citizens. No. Going overseas. The most frustrating thing for me about the whole Ukraine situation is giving Zelensky the fucking Freedom Medal. You're all espousing democracy without actually knowing what the fuck you're talking about. And you give Zelensky a medal even though he is the most fascist motherfucker that exists right now in any government in the world. That's right. Zelensky is more of a dictator than Stalin or Xi or Kim Jong-un. Or whatever, Kim Jong, whatever the fuck is in charge now in North Korea. You guys say, democracy is safe in Ukraine. Okay, well, what the fuck did he do to his political adversaries? What did he do to any reporter who spoke out against him? You don't know, do you? Probably not, because you don't want to know. It wasn't nice. It wasn't great. It wasn't democracy. But hey, what do I fucking know? I'm educated and you aren't. And yes, I do say that with disdain. You have a right to say whatever the hell you want to say, and that's fine. And people have a right to believe you're ignorant bullshit, and that's fine. But if you can't tell the difference between democracy and a republic, and if you continue to call the United States a democracy, I want to strip you of your fucking rights. Because we aren't a democracy, we are a republic. It is an entirely different form of government. The idiots who say, anyone who says this doesn't know anything, well, they're lying to you. Democracy and republics are entirely different. To that point, at the federal level, we are a republic. At the state level, that's where it gets a little bit iffy. But in my own state, I should say in my commonwealth, our current government is lying to the people. They're lying. They're saying, oh, if the Republicans win this seat, they'll take away your right to an abortion through a constitutional amendment. If you think that's actually a possibility, you don't know how your own government works, and you shouldn't be fucking voting. You shouldn't. Here in Pennsylvania, when we have a constitutional amendment to our state constitution, you know what happens? Every single citizen who has the right to vote votes on that amendment. Now, I know COVID was a scary time because they made it one. They stripped you of your constitutional rights, something they couldn't do, but they did anyway, and you guys all ate it up and went after your fellow citizens who refused to be stripped of their rights by their government. You went after them. How dare you be outside without a mask? You done taking it up the ass there? You done listening to their bullshit? Probably not. You probably love that shit. See, Der Führer Wolf And yes, I will refer to former Governor Wolf as Der Führer Wolf. He did a shit ton of unconstitutional illegal things. He took a bunch of power he didn't actually have, said he had it because emergency, crisis, stripped us of our rights here in Pennsylvania. So we made a constitutional amendment that he could never do that fucking again. And to make it so that not everybody voted on this amendment, they put it in during a primary election. Shit, I showed up at my polling place. It's like, hey, here to vote. Signed in, did all the fucking work. They go, okay, look, you only get to vote on this. I was like, this is why I'm here. It was to vote to pass the amendment that made it so that no governor could ever do that ever again. Individual citizens vote on amendments in Pennsylvania. I'm pretty confident that's how it works in every other state as well. For state constitutions, the citizens vote directly for that amendment. That's closer to democracy. Still not democracy, because our representatives are the ones who voted to put that to us. The people didn't turn around and say, we need this. The representatives turned around and said, our citizens are asking for this. Let's get it to them so they can do the voting on this. And that's how it works. So, to my fellow Pennsylvanians, don't listen to Shapiro when he lies to you about what's going on and you're going to lose your right to an abortion even though you get to vote on that. And let's face it, Philadelphia and fucking Pittsburgh are never going to let that happen. Just like they will never allow this state to get out from the boot of the Democrat Party. But, what do I know? I'm actually educated in all this shit. So I obviously know nothing. And I was educated before Obama completely destroyed how this nation worked. And yes, I'm not lying about that. That fucker destroyed how this nation operated and worked. And he did it on purpose. He said he was going to fundamentally change the United States, and he did. Our government is now authoritarian. Our organizations that were meant to protect us are now actively going against and going to prosecute the citizens for exercising their constitutional rights. I want to fundamentally change the United States. That's great, buddy. That's great, but that's a threat to the United States because fundamentally changing something means you don't actually like it. You want it to drastically change to suit your desires. That's authoritarian. But that tweet, we need to remake the Republican Party. No, you don't. Let it die. When political parties stop doing what they're espousing they will do in the United States, they go away. Or at least they used to. We had 4 or 5 different political parties leading up to the War of Secession. Now, again, if you're one of those uneducated people who lives and votes in the United States, you're probably going, what's the War of Secession? Uneducated people who believe in revisionist history call it the Civil War. But it wasn't. It's the War of Secession. States seceded. The Union said, no, you don't. And we fought a war. And we crushed another nation We destroyed an independent nation made up of our former territory to fold it back into our nation. And we had a policy, much like Germany did after World War II, where they were re-educating Nazis. We were trying to do that with Democrats. And I'm not even fucking kidding you. Reconstruction was re-education for Democrats who didn't actually, and still don't, actually believe in the Constitution, the founding principles, or equality. Now, if you haven't noticed, lately the Democrats really don't talk about equality, they talk about equity, which is an entirely different thing. They are not the same. Equity is actually horrible, and it's a horrible thing. Because no matter what you do, you're going to end up in the same place as anyone else, regardless of what they did. So you could work your ass off for 20 years, break your body, making sure shit gets done on time, and gets done right. And some piece of shit who spends 3 years fucking everything up, making your job much more difficult, they get the same shit you do. The United States was meant to be a meritocracy, which means you do good, you get recognized for doing good. Was meant to be a moral nation for moral people. Because if you don't have morals, if you don't have standards, if you don't have a code of conduct with which you live and you hold others to, then none of it matters. And frankly, right now, we don't. We are not a moral nation. Polygamy. We never allowed that. That was so bad that we actually chased the Mormons out of our country. And then when we got to where the Mormons were, we were like, no, we're taking this too, so stop your shit. It is illegal to have several wives in the United States or several husbands in the United States. It's still illegal because it is immoral. You can do what you want. I don't believe in that bullshit. But we are far from what we're supposed to be. We are far and away from having the people we need to actually make this nation function. And frankly, the factions that are now in power need to go away. The Republicans just need to die a slow, stupid death where they just keep pissing off their constituents until all of their constituents abandon them. The Democrats need to be crushed through legislation. They have corrupted everything. You can't get a fair trial in a Democrat-held area if you're a Republican. Don't expect it. And fuck, both parties go judge shopping. They go to find favorable justices. I thought all of the justices in this country were supposed to actually uphold the constitutions, but they selectively do so. Shit, even the Supreme Court does it. The only case the Supreme Court should have heard at the end of 2020 was Texas versus Pennsylvania. Why? Well, actually, if you know the Constitution, you'd understand why. Because the only court in the land that can actually litigate that was the Supreme Court. And to abdicate that job, to turn around and refuse to do that job, even though Pennsylvania did ignore its state constitution, which did affect a national election. He didn't do anything. In fact, it's reported that Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice, apparently exclaimed that he didn't want any more riots. Which means the government can't actually enforce anything. Which means why the fuck do we even listen anymore? There's a reason we have written constitutions in the United States, but fuck all of you, because none of you actually know why. You won't be bothered to learn why. A lot of you are celebrating a monarch across the ocean, even though that piece of shit should have just said, let William do it. No reason for fucking Charles. No reason for fucking Charles. But he's there now because he needed to be king. Fucking monarchs. Well, we have the same problem here with a political class. Hillary was supposed to be president! Hillary should be in prison. Because the amount of laws that she broke. The amount of shit she did. She did pay for play. What happened to the Clinton Foundation? Most of you don't even know this, but the Clinton Foundation brought a boat into Baltimore, and there were refugees in the hold. And several of those refugees were actually on our terror watch list. The Clinton Foundation knew there were refugees on their boat. They didn't vet any of them, they just brought them right in. But none of you know that. Why? Because it's not a concern for you, because you don't pay attention, because it wasn't a concern for the mainstream media. Local news stations covered it. But the Republican Party needs to be replaced. Because they're not doing anything for their constituents. The Democrat Party needs to be destroyed. Like they should have been following the War of Secession. Because they're evil, terrible people who don't hold the nation's values at heart. In fact, they oppose the values of our nation at every turn. But hey, what do I know? Just a little food for thought, and frankly, I don't feel like getting into explaining to a bunch of communists that they are exactly like the fascists, but they aren't educated on it, and I spent a good amount of time learning all this shit from primary source documents and the people who came up with the ideology of fascism. Hitler. You know who the original fascist was? His name was Mussolini. How I wish I could be as ignorant as the vast majority of you fucks. Man, I'd probably be so much happier. Sitting there going, oh yeah, this girl, she's definitely my girlfriend, even though she hangs out with all these other guys and leaves me to watch her kid, or the economy's not so terrible, I just can't afford these basic needs because, I'm just not working hard enough, or, there's no problem with all of our taxpayer money going overseas to fund this thing because democracy, that's what we are. It'd be nice to be so fucking ignorant. Yeah. One can dream, I guess. One can dream.